Hai semua, kembali lagi bersama seniman muda berkarya. Kali ini aku mau throwback ketika aku pergi ke sebuah galeri seni yang banyak mempromosikan seniman-seniman Southeast Asia. Galeri ini bernama Gajah Gallery. Saat itu Gajah Gallery sedang menyelenggarakan pameran Customised Postures, Colonising Gestures, yang berlangsung pada tanggal 25 Mei hingga 16 Juni 2024. Menampilkan karya seniman kelompok besar asal Indonesia, Malaysia hingga Filipina. Sebelum diselenggarakan di Indonesia, pameran ini pertama kali hadir di Gajah Gallery cabang Singapura pada 19 Januari hingga 18 Februari 2024. Karya-karya dalam pameran ini mengeksplorasi tentang perpotongan citra fotografi, kolonial, dan praktik seni kontemporer di Asia Tenggara. Saat berkeliling di sana, aku ditemani Mr. Jasdeep Sandhu, founder dari Gajah Gallery, dan mendengarkan penjelasannya secara langsung mengenai galeri dan pameran karya seni yang diadakan.
Let me give you an introduction first. This show stems from an initiative of the gallery. Some years ago, we started collecting 19th century photography.
Wow.
As part of the gallery collection. So some of these photographs are about 120, 130, 140 years old. We thought that it was an important component of Southeast Asian art history. But at the same time, I also started noticing that quite a lot of artists were using photography, historical photographs as part of their art work, art process and art impetus. So I found that actually very interesting that you had a group of artists, especially looking back at historical facts, historical context through photos. And that became a very interesting dialogue for some of these artists. So that's basically the foundation for this show. And then we managed to get Dr. Alex Supartono, who's a professor of photography at the Edinburgh University. So he managed to pull together some of these artists and try and connect the dots with 19th century photography and contemporary art practices.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
Thank you. Right.
It's amazing because you're connecting the dots and then collecting the painters and the artists and then from Southeast Asia, right? So
Yes.
Indonesia, Philippines,
Singapore, Malaysia, and I think that's basically what we have from here. And so it's been a very interesting topic because as Southeast Asia is developing, we are trying to put together historical context of our own art histories, and I think this forms an interesting insight into what's happening. Because of this show that we've done, I think more artists have become interested in this, and also it gives us a certain context of how we place our art histories in. So there's a lot of value and insight into shows like this.
So if I may ask, what message do you actually want to convey from the portraits, from the photographs?
Oh, from the photos and from the portraits, like, for example, different artists have got different agendas. There isn't one particular line for each artist. For example, Mangu Putra, he's working on a series of artworks based on the Puputan mainly on the puputan that happened in Bali.
This one?
Which seems to have been forgotten. He's trying to bring back the reality of what happened, which seems to have been forgotten, but he's also trying to address the historical context and factual events of what happened. I mean, if you look at this, this is possibly one of the earliest Wi-Fi's that you've got, you know, and
like a group photo.
Yes, a group photo, and it tells different, historical facts. Some of the hats that you have, which are slanted up, belong to a different group of Dutch soldiers, and some of the hats which are flat. So all these things are very factual.
There's so many symbolism.
Yes, and the documentation of it also. Surprisingly, we found a very interesting Dutch historical figure called Nguyen Kem, who was actually part of the Rombongan, which was documenting the atrocity, but that seems to have been glossed over. Whatever the relevance of that, we don't know. That needs to be examined by historians, but still, it gives you a proper context of what people's ideas were back then.
Yeah, and from the painting itself, I can see like there's a lot of stories behind it, like also the landmarks and
But what I find interesting, which I think, if I'm not wrong, which I think the artist added, are the flames at the back.
Oh yeah, wow.
He's very nicely glossed that over. Nice. It's the bakar. It's like the actual horrific incident itself, which is very subtly put behind. And until today, I think Indonesians they do not like to talk about the difficult times, but that is a factual reality of this painting, of what actually happened. It's the flames, and I think that's the artistic input which I admire in the artists. And then, of course, coming back to your question, you've got artists like Handi Wirman Saputra, who has completely gone away from art histories, but he's using photography techniques. So this is actually an image which he scanned, distorted, and he's actually printed onto a steel plate.
Oh, no wonder we can see like the metals.
Yes.
And
So all this actually is done by a drawing or a painting by the artist, but the scanography effect is what he's using, which he's using the plastic sort of like characteristics of photography to play around with his artwork, which is on the other side on the other spectrum of this show. Yeah.
And like from afar, it looks like it has a 3D texture, but when we get closer, it's 2D. Yeah.
Yes, but I think that's the artist's painting skill. He's so tremendously skillful.
Yeah. I love it. I love the metals and then the mixture of the colors. Yeah.
This artist is, I think, if I can imagine, I don't know whether it's his intention, but his ideas, I think, is about the footprint, the human footprint. So you see that the broken lines, how broken the footprint that we leave, but also the broken lines of what we leave behind. So I find that a very deeply intellectual sort of like concept.
This is mind-blowing. It's like a lifeline, something like that.
Yeah.
Like the journey of a
exactly.
person.
I was looking for that word, lifeline.
Lifeline.
Right. Yeah. So on the other side we have Suzanne Victor.
Okay.
Suzanne Victor is a Singaporean artist. So this is Suzanne Victor.
Okay.
She used colonial photos. The photos were actually an instrument used by the colonial powers to send back to their countries to have their depiction of what we are like. So she actually used all these pictures she put together all these old photographs, she distorted it, and she used the river because she realized that the rivers were entry points into each country.
Like the port and like the hub.
Yes,
where
your
people
Tanjung,
meet.
your Tanjung Priok and
Tanjung
our
Priok.
Keppel. So that's what she actually
import,
was.
export.
Yes. So that was part of the whole commerce and what she was trying to get at.
Mungkin kalau dalam bahasa Indonesia pusat perdagangan.
Yes. So she used the lenses to actually create a magnification. So instead,
this is cool.
So you actually, when you go forward, you start looking at all the people that she's actually depicted in this, and in a way bringing them back to life.
And I love it because so many traditions from each
Yes.
ethnicities and
Yeah.
cultures, like Indonesian, and
Yeah.
then there's also
There were so many people
Yeah,
from
so-
Bugis and Java coming to Singapore at that time to kerja.
wow.
Then actually with the photos that we see, there's quite a lot of pictures that I think some of them actually had depictions of females in the photos themselves. Like some of them had, not these here, but some of them actually had female tobacco smokers and what women were like back then, and how they've transformed, etc. So these photos actually are very much overlooked in our historical discourse.
So how they also lived back then.
How they lived back then, and the portrayal, the people, their clothing, how some of their clothing actually is very sophisticated, very nicely sort of drawn out and stuff. So these are things.
I love this one. This one is Balinese.
Yeah, this is Oktora Chan. So she's actually based in Australia at the moment, and
I love the canvas
Yes.
technique,
Yeah.
and also there's a little bit of popping out
Yes.
3D.
a bit
Ornament,
of the
yeah.
ornamentation.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's very nice also.
How do you feel about the exhibition? Because now it's the opening.
Yes.
Today is the first
Yeah.
day, and how do you feel? Do you feel happy about it? And yeah,
Delighted, because I think this show is very difficult to put together. The essays, the write-ups behind it are very interesting. I think it adds a different dimension because everyone's looking at sometimes focusing too much on one particular part. Maybe it could be the contemporary or the moderns, but this is something coming from way back. So it's a different dimension, a different angle. It's very nice for collectors. I hope it'll be very interesting for collectors to come and have a look and be entertained by what they see.
and do you have like a certain message for maybe art enthusiasts?
The message for art enthusiasts is, basically, firstly, we're very happy to be in Jakarta, but at the same time, there's more to come. The gallery has been working on very good projects. We are working with some very good Indonesian artists, Murniasi, Yunisa, etc. We're trying to bring them overseas. We have been very successful. So it looks very good for the Indonesian modern contemporary. In general, the whole Indonesian art scene looks very, very promising.
And I love it because you're bringing up about the past, the historical contents, and then
Yes.
the context that you want to portray as well.
Yes.
I guess this is really educating and inspiring.
It is, and I think there's been too much of an emphasis by collectors on what's the next thing. But actually, because Indonesia is now finally becoming economically very strong, a lot of the opportunities that are available now were not available to some of the artists like Murniasi, like Semsasiahan back then. So there has been a lot of good work produced by artists which needs to be re-examined or examined for the first time for some artists actually. And it makes the whole art environment a lot more exciting.
Yeah, I see it's growing, it's
Yes.
expanding, and there's so many more to come.
Yes.
So I'm excited for Gajah Gallery.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Right.
Mr. Jasdeep.
No, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Banyak sekali ya insights baru yang kita dapatkan dari episode kali ini. Seru dan sangat menarik sekali cerita mengenai Gajah Gallery dan pameran Customised Postures di Colonising Gestures ini. Sebagai penutup, ada kutipan dari Mr. Jasdeep Sandhu yang menunjukkan kepada kita bahwa berawal dari tekad pribadi untuk mencintai seni, hal ini bisa memberikan dampak positif yang lebih luas. Seperti yang telah beliau lakukan, yaitu mendirikan galeri ini yang kemudian bisa menjadi wadah bagi banyak seniman. As a gallery, our mission is to provide a platform for our artists. The global recognition of Southeast Asian artists is on the rise, and we are continually exploring how to further advance our artists' reach and impact. Jasdeep Sandhu.
Salam seniman muda berkarya.